at adopting Bitcoin 2022 in El Salvador, and now I have the honor and pleasure with Mike Peterson. How are you doing?
Amazing. It's so fun to see everybody here and see everybody so excited about El Salvador.
A lot of our viewers don't know that much about Bitcoin yet, so I think it would be great if you could introduce yourself briefly.
Yeah, I'm Mike Peterson, one of the team members with Bitcoin Beach, and so we started, I think, was the world's first circular Bitcoin economy in El Zonte, a small village in El Salvador, and it kind of grew into this thing that actually got the country to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender here, and has turned into this conference and all the craziness you see around you right now.
Yeah, we want to hear everything about it. Before that, maybe like, what was your personal path towards or into Bitcoin? Like, when did you hear about it first, and when did you decide to figure it out?
Yeah, I remember reading about Bitcoin early on. I've always been interested in the financial world. I was an economics major, and I worked for a while as a financial planner. And so I remember seeing an article early on, I think it was in the Wall Street Journal, talking about this, new decentralized money, and I was very intrigued. I'm not a tech person, so as I explored trying to buy it at that time, it was super complicated, and I think you had to send money to Japan, to Mt. Gox. That was the only exchange you could buy from, and then you'd have to try to custody it somehow. And so it was probably 2016, 2017 before I actually bought Bitcoin, but I was following it for a number of years before then. And, I didn't initially see it playing a role in what we were doing in El Salvador, but, as time kind of rolled along, just realized how many problems it would solve, because even though El Salvador uses the US dollar, it's still a challenge to get money from the US to here. It's still a challenge to do any type of electronic commerce because so many people don't have bank accounts. And so I started realizing, wow, Bitcoin would fix a lot of these issues.
Super interesting. So there's of course, there are these very practical problems that Bitcoin can solve. But I wonder, were you also, let's say, like a skeptic of the traditional financial system before? So was that a reason why you said, okay, like, that's interesting? I just sat here with a journalist, before, and she said, like, I'm a bit of a skeptic of Bitcoin. I think it's risky. And I said, no, I see the other way, right? I think the traditional financial system is risky, and I'm skeptic of that. So were you also, like, already aware of the systemic problems?
Yeah, very aware of the shortcomings. And one, coming from financial planning background, you just see how disadvantaged most of the world is. It's those that are connected that all the wealth accrues to. So I understand that aspect, but also just looking at money as a whole, you see that most currencies don't last more than a couple hundred years at the best. I mean, obviously some of them don't even last a decade, but even the ones that are reserve currencies tend to fail and implode at some time. And so, and that's just natural, because anytime somebody has the power to just print more of something, it's just going to be irresistible. They're going to get into trouble. There's going to be something happens where they just start devaluing the money, and then people are going to look for a better money. So the fact that Bitcoin has solved this issue, nobody can just print it. There can never be more than 21 million. It can't be devalued. To me, that like stuck. Okay, they have solved this problem that existed forever, is how do you have a money that has all the properties that you need in money, but also that can't just be replicated.
How did you end up in El Zonte at all?
Came down to El Salvador on a surf trip, and it's just a beautiful country. The waves were great, the water was warm, and the people especially warm. I mean, just amazing people. And so I called my wife after being here for a week and said, hey, we got to come back. And I was on a surf trip just with a buddy, and I called her and said, hey, we need to come back next month and buy a house. And we did. We came back, and we made an offer on a place and bought it. And then for probably 10 years, it was just a vacation home, and we decided to make this kind of permanent home about 10 years ago.
So do you remember, like, what was maybe the first step you took to educate the community in El Zonte about Bitcoin?
The first step we took was one that didn't work at all. I mean, we tried to sit down with a lot of adults and kind of educate them about all the intricacies of Bitcoin, about mining and all those things. And we saw that people's eyes just kind of glazed over, and they were like, eh. And so we kind of shifted gears and realized that it was the youth that have a better understanding of how value can transact online. And we also realized that you need to first get people transacting in it, and then they'll become so self-motivated to understand it deeper, to understand the security concerns, how mining works, how to move things to self-custody. But first, it's key that they start transacting and see the problem that it solves.
What made you decide to start this initiative? I mean, was it just one came to the other, or did you just had this idea or like an initial thought that made you say like I want to do this now? What was the beginning story?
Well, we actually took an existing project and interjected Bitcoin into it. And so we were already doing a lot of work with the youth, with economic development. El Salvador has a history of real challenge with the gangs, and so our goal was to keep the youth out of the gangs. And we saw that the reason so many of them were joining had their roots in the economic system. The fact that their parents were leaving to go to the U.S. because they felt like they couldn't make a living here, and they were growing up without those parental figures in their lives, and so the gangs were kind of serving as surrogates for that. And that was creating more economic problems and pushing more jobs out of the country. And so we were already working in that, and then we came across somebody that wanted to donate to what we were doing, but with the stipulation that it would be in Bitcoin and that we'd actually not just cash in the Bitcoin, but we would use it in transactional ways. And even though I had been in the Bitcoin space and been doing this work in the community, I hadn't really seen the possibility of connecting these two together. And I pondered on it for a night after this opportunity was brought to us and thought, okay, we can actually form a circular economy and it'll solve all these other issues that we're dealing with and bring these new resources into the community. So that's kind of how it all came together. It wasn't some grand scheme I had, it was just an opportunistic thing of seeing, hey, this could actually work.
You had mentioned in your keynote the importance of the team you gathered. What was then the thing that really made the whole thing work, where you got traction and people understood your vision and your story? What was that?
I think, like you said, it was the team. It was having people in the community that people trust, they're willing to listen.
But you talked to them basically one-on-one, and over time they built the trust and they understood, because it's hard to understand Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
So it was just like you were in touch with them before, and then they found each other.
Yeah, and I think once we would, like I said, we'd try to get them transacting with Bitcoin right away, and then they would become self-motivated to start learning more. They want to know why it went up, why it went down, why people are willing to exchange. When we brought the ATM into El Zonte, and they saw that you could actually send Bitcoin and it would spit dollars out, I think that really made it real to them. I mean, we think like, well, fiat money is that's less valuable, but for them that's all they've known. And so the fact that somebody was willing to exchange Bitcoin for dollars showed them the value of it. And as they start researching and reading, then they understand, no, this is even more valuable than dollars. I don't want to be converting it to dollars. And so it's kind of a process, and I think all Bitcoiners go through that to some extent or another, and it's something that plays out over years, really.
So this is happening in around 2019 or 2020?
Yeah, the end of 2019, and then going into 2020.
Did you have any idea what this might become?
I mean, our goal was just to see it become what it's become in the local community, and we thought that there was an opportunity for the country to change the narrative about El Salvador. The fact that they had already given up their own currency and were using the dollar, we kept pushing like, hey, there's an opportunity for you to adopt Bitcoin and become the leader in this. And so, but that was more like, trying to go for the home run. It was the really the stretch goal, not what we thought would actually happen. But what has happened has actually far exceeded anything we could have dreamed of.
Do you see that other communities around El Zonte are picking up on the benefits?
Yeah, definitely. The real growth in tourism has started in El Zonte, but it's spreading out to all the regions on the coast, and then even in the capital city, they're having an influx of Bitcoin-related businesses that are bringing in jobs that pay significantly more than what the normal wages would have been in the past. And so you see this kind of benefit growing out from El Zonte, pretty much across El Salvador at this point.
Do you believe I think Bitcoin always comes with a flower bucket of ideas and values. So, I mean, if you would give policy advice, it's not done with just making Bitcoin legal tender. I guess you also have to have a very open economic policy perhaps, and like you have, if you want to reap the benefits, you want the country to be open to tourism, and yeah, have easy requirements for businesses to come and stuff like that. Do you agree with that?
100%. And I think we're seeing that. I mean, we've already seen it, I think, in the way they responded to COVID. They kind of switched their COVID policies as they realized, hey, we're doing a disservice. We're keeping tourists out. We're keeping people that want to invest in the country out for really no medical reason, just because that's what every other country's doing. And so I think the fact that they adopted Bitcoin as currency gave them the courage to kind of go against what everybody else was doing and do something sensible and lift those restrictions. And that's why tourism here has recovered so much quickly, it's so much more quickly than it has in the rest of the world. One is because it's brought in so many Bitcoiners, but also the government's opened up and the country was one of the first to really embrace tourists coming back.
Now we're here at the second year of adopting Bitcoin, the big conference. What is your impression?
It's amazing to see, like, just in a year how much it has grown. Last year, the main challenge was getting people to come to El Salvador. Even for the speakers, they were afraid, like, I don't want to go there, I might get shot. That was the question you heard over and over again, was about security. But talking to the organizers this year, said nobody really talks about that anymore. Now the concerns are, am I going to be able to get a room in El Zonte? Everything seems booked up. Where should I stay? There's this influx of all these people. How do I make sure I'm on the list to be able to get a passport when those regulations are updated? And so that's a huge shift in narrative from last year.
I think that the hard numbers also show that it works. Double-digit GDP for the first time in a long history. So economic facts are speaking that this works. Let's hope this stays. So it's really a success story. What are the next steps for you in El Zonte? What are you looking to do in the coming years?
So our goal for El Zonte and for the community is to remain very community focused. We want to make sure, just because this has blown up to a big thing, that we don't lose focus of what our goal is, which is to see the youth and the people on the coast where we live to really start dreaming and see a better future for themselves, be willing to go to university, and they will be the ones that help this country turn around. So that's our focus locally. I now spend a lot of my time on other projects. There's been a number of projects that have seen what have happened in El Salvador, and they want to emulate those in their countries. And so I spend a lot of my time working with other Bitcoin Beach kind of spin-offs around the world. And that's very exciting to me, because it's true to the narrative about Bitcoin of being decentralized. It's that same thing. We're seeing these projects bubble up from below, and nobody's controlling them. It's this loose network of people trying to help each other, but we're seeing real transformation happen.
If somebody has never been to El Salvador but is considering to visit, what would be your 3 must-dos and must-sees in El Salvador?
I mean, the beaches are key to El Salvador. They have some of the most amazing beaches. The water is like bath water. It's an amazing place to learn how to surf. So I would say that is one. You have to learn how to surf. Pupusas is the food that they're known for here. They're super cheap, and you find them everywhere. So you have to eat pupusas. And then there's a bunch of amazing volcanoes that, beyond just the potential for mining Bitcoin, they're just spectacular to hike and to spend some time on. So those would be kind of the 3 things I'd tell people to make sure they don't miss.
Mike, thank you so much for your time, and best of success further on.
Thank you. I'm glad you guys are here.